What is the most wholesome thing you have seen? My brother is autistic, and while he has excellent language skills, it's very visibly obvious that he is mentally disabled. We were in the Costco food court eating a hot dog when he started loudly singing a Madonna song. Bless his heart, but he is a terrible singer. There were a group of teens who, if you were to stereotype/judge by looking at them, looked like hooligans sitting behind us. I was worried at first that we were going to get the usual BS comments, but they started singing along with him. One came over, high-fived him and started dancing. I will never, ever forget that as long as I live. I was headed to Oakland from San Francisco through the tube. The train's packed as always. People on BART. San Francisco's public train are good about public transit etiquette in general during commute hours, so nobody's talking or listening to music or anything. When we leave the tube onto the viaduct over the port, one guy answers his phone. Hello. Yeah. Oh my God. What hospital? Okay, I'll be there as soon as I can. He hangs up and just looks super distraught. Someone taps him on the shoulder and says my car is parked at West Oakland. Do you need a ride? He agrees and they get off together. It was a little gesture, but it was uplifting to see someone volunteer for a stranger like that. When my youngest brother was about 8 or 9 years old, he's 12 now, he came home with a Student of the Month paper in his folder. He heard that the school custodian had recently come back from having back surgery, so after lunch he gathered a few of his buddies and they swept the cafeteria to give the custodian a break. He was so humble about it too, he didn't care that he got noticed. I just remember being so proud and crying a bit, because although I knew he is a good nugget, I just didn't expect him to go out of his way at such a young age, and to get his buddies to follow. Makes my heart happy. When I first had foster children placed with me after bedtime, my pit bull would go into each room and check on the kids and then sleep in the hallway. If any woke crying in the night, she would crawl into bed with them. A few years ago, I was on my way to catch the bus when a middle-aged woman called me from behind a newspaper stand. She pointed to the bus stop, 1 block down, where a guy was standing holding something. She said he was her son, who just got out of jail after serving time for dealing, and today was his first day trying to make an honest life. He had baked some traditional pastries himself and was trying to sell it on the bus stop, and she wanted to make sure things went right for him on his first day so he would not feel tempted to go back on selling illicit substances. Then she put some money on my hand, asked me if I could buy some pastry, and obviously not tell him she was there. At the stop, I saw the guy, probably in his mid-30s, with this little table of pastries. I bought 3, we chatted a little bit, and 1 minute later my bus arrived and I left. It always makes me emotional and warm inside to think how pure a mother's love can be. A friend and I were talking and she said shit in front of the kid of another friend. I dismissed it by saying she probably knows worse. We asked what was the worst word she knows. She very carefully looked around just in case her parents were around and whispered selfish. My neighbor's dog hadn't seen me in half a year. I was walking out to my car when she spotted me and began angrily barking because she didn't recognize me. I whistled to her. I trained her since she was a pup to respond to a specific whistle I do, and she stopped barking. It took her about a second before the tail began wagging like crazy, her ears perked straight up, and she sprinted over to me and rolled onto her belly while crying for me to pet her. When I was a preschool teacher, we had one kid who was our certified cheer-upper. If someone was crying, she'd get a tissue, walk over, carefully blot their eyes and make them blow their nose. All while saying, "It's okay, you're okay." Eventually, they'd stop crying, she'd take their hand and they'd go play. She was a little angel. My 7-year-old son was in a taekwondo tournament, and he was getting ready to perform forms against a girl his age. She was clearly nervous as she was shaking and had tears running down her face. Right before the contest between them began, my son noticed her, walked up to her, and patted her on the shoulder and told her not to worry and that it would be okay. The entire audience awed at once. When the contest finished, the girl clearly performed her form better than my son. When it came time for the judges to give out places, they gave them both first place. It was the only match in the whole tournament where they did this. I was so proud of my son that day. I'm tearing up as I write this. My son has moderate cerebral palsy and autism. When he was about to start preschool at age 3, I lost sleep over whether he would be bullied or accepted by his peers. 3 years later, I'm getting choked up thinking about every time I've had to drop him off late. Each time and each year, his classmates stop whatever they're doing, yell his name, smile at him, and usually a few will run over to give him a hug. It's the most wholesome, beautiful thing a mom could ever see. It's also wonderful when a peer sees him outside of school and talks to him just like any other kid. There's no way they could begin to understand how much their wholesome, pure love means to my son and his mommy. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go find some tissues. Didn't see this myself, but is one of the most wholesome things I've ever heard about. My friend is a wedding officiant. A few weeks ago she performed a wedding for 2 gay men aged 95 and 90. They felt the world was finally ready to accept them, so rented a 30-minute time slot at a chapel, brought 2 friends as witnesses, and had a short and sweet ceremony. Afterwards, they had their first meal as a married couple at a wing place across the street. I'm a record producer. On a particular song the client wanted a child's voice to open it, so the bassist's 10-year-old son came and recorded a vocal part. Once we wrapped, the singer said to the kid, "Musicians get paid." And he handed the kid a £20 note. The bassist then did the same. A small gesture maybe, but in our world making a living is hard, and it was amazing to see professionals showing how it ought to be. Working as a palliative care doctor. Little old lady with terminal lung cancer is brought in, suffering from chemotherapy side effects. Says she wants to stop it but can't bear to because her husband wants her to go on so badly. Got her comfortable, went outside and ran into the husband. Before he goes in to see her he says she wishes she'd stop the chemo but he knows she wants to keep going too badly to give up. Brought them in together and had a little chat about it, and they both realized they were making assumptions, had a really sweet little cry together and just spent the rest of the day holding each other and talking. She died later that afternoon, but they were both so happy and content. Nobody's gonna see this at this point, but whatever. I think it's a pretty good story. I work at a cemetery watering flowers, and earlier this week an older couple walked by. The man was pulling one of those little wagon things and there was a little girl, probably their granddaughter and maybe 4 years old, sitting in it. The grandfather just made some small talk with me as they passed, and after they had passed me by a little bit I heard the little girl say, "Those flowers look so beautiful." Instantly made me smile. I think, as long as someone's human, they'd have the same reaction. It was great. A while back I had a major operation on my spine and was in a wheelchair for a while afterwards. I was out one day, my partner was pushing my chair and our 2-year-old daughter was on my knee. The weather had been fine up to that point, but then the Scottish weather decided to remind us of her presence and the heavens opened. It started chucking it down. We were waiting at traffic lights whilst I did my best to shield my daughter from the downpour. A woman approached from behind and handed me her umbrella. I was shocked but said thank you. She said not a problem with a smile and went on her way, getting soaked in the rain. I don't know who she was or what her name was, but I'll always remember her. I read a story once about a woman whose father had died before her wedding and his organs were donated. The man who received his heart walked her down the aisle. It was bedtime, so everyone was in their rooms, but I was getting water in the kitchen. As I leave and go to the hallway where my room and the other 2 rooms for my brothers, I see my dog leave my room, poke his head into my brother's room and then my other brother's room. he was totally doing a head count. It makes sense BC, we're a pretty big family in a big house. What makes it better is that my dog is no bigger than a beagle, but he still feels like the protector. I have bipolar disorder. Sometimes it can get scary. One day, I flew into a rage over nothing. I was screaming as loud as I could and punching pillows. I'm responsible, and my dog, who is not a trained therapy dog, came over to me with his head bent low, laid in my lap, and kissed me until I calmed down. He is my angel. I teach high school English. I had two students who always work together, one is black and one is Hispanic. My Hispanic student would always struggle understanding word connotation, and one day she got really defeated about it. At once, my other student touched her arm and said, "Listen, this is your second language. You're going a great job. I am really proud of you." It took a lot out of me not to cry right then.